It's morning in the Oak Ridge building, the provincial forensic hospital at Waypoint Centre for mental health care. Patients are getting their meals, getting ready for the day.
This is where we shave. All the stuff are locked up here in the cupboard. Shaving cream and stuff, so the staff bring the razors down, they'll open it up.
The routine is often the same, and for patients like C, it's a routine he thrives on.
You get up supposedly at 7:30. Sometimes I sleep in a little bit and they have to wake me up, but I have to be up there for meds at 8 o'clock. Then I'll come back and I'll probably play 2 or 3 games of bridge, and then I'll go to school.
For nearly 4 decades, C has been at Oak Ridge. He's one of 160 patients receiving treatment at the hospital. They were all men whose mental health challenges resulted in conflict with the law and are sent to the province's only maximum secure forensic mental health hospital for assessment and treatment. Oak Ridge was built in 1933. At the time, it was the new building, standing up on the hill from the administration building, which was built in the 1860s. Its setting is on the shores of Georgian Bay. The hospital was once a boys' reformatory, but by 1904, the boys' reformatory was then converted into an asylum for the insane. The hospital then expanded to include Oak Ridge, originally intended to provide custodial care to the criminally insane. It was the only institution of its kind in Canada at the time, opening for 100 men sent by train from Guelph in the dead of winter.
I think that it's about time that we give some more credit.
Today, the men who are in the hospital come by way of the courts. They don't arrive by train. They are brought by vehicle and are met by their care team, who take them to their ward and their room. While the process of coming to Oak Ridge has changed over the years, there's one distinct thing that didn't.
I don't think it has. It doesn't have that initial shock, but it's still, that door makes a real solid sound.
A sound that even 4 decades later affects C, and he'll always remember the first time he arrived at Oak Ridge.
Everything's on hold, your emotions and so forth. Everything's kind of blank. You're walking kind of in a fog. You're nervous, you're scared. When that big drill gate closed and you hear that clank, it kind of gives you a little jerk and a shiver.
Everybody has a different reaction when they enter the Oak Ridge building. First, I've heard many people say they hear the clang behind them when the door closes, and certainly I heard that as well too. That didn't seem to bother me so much though. I think it was just the fascination of the building, and for me, more importantly, what was going on in the building.
Rob DeRush has worked at Waypoint for 25 years. Today, he is the interim vice president of human resources. But even as a young staff member, a student working inside Oak Ridge, the sounds of the building and the building itself captivated him. He says the building draws people in. It happened to many staff over the years, and DeRush was one of those who couldn't escape the intrigue.
The work that went on in the Oak Ridge building and now goes on in our atrium building, the bringing together of mental health and the law, I found really fascinating as well too, and took a keen interest in that. The first card was my first year here as a summer student in 1989. Hard to believe when I look back at that picture, but that was me in 1989.
Over the decades, many local residents wore these name badges, just like Rob DeRush. Many people followed in their father's footsteps to begin their own careers at the area's largest employer.
It's interesting, though, when you look at who is officiating at the ceremony.
Sharon Zwicker and George Kateko were the former administrators of mental health center Penetanguishene.
I mean, that it's just that it's been such an integral part of the community for so long. I think people know about it. They know that there are good positions here, interesting positions, that there's room for advancement, and you know, why would you move if you don't have to? I guess
it's very accepted in the community.
Yeah.
Working at Oak Ridge, being part of this hospital, and George has said it, there's lots of advancements. Forensics can be very exciting.
Yeah.
Not many people who are still living in the area remember Oak Ridge's construction or the expansion that followed in the 1950s. But everyone knows the architecture is old, but sturdy.
And so on. And that was one of the unique things about Oak Ridge, that although it was a very secure facility, the activities that went on inside, I mean, you would walk with clients down the hallway, you would see them, say hello. I mean, it wasn't what people might have pictured as a very restrictive, two attendant staff on every patient, and that I mean, you didn't really kind of see that very much in Oak Ridge. It was quite open.
It was a design that wasn't warm or even inviting, but it was a design that worked. By the 1950s, there were so many patients, the building needed to be expanded. So the hospital staff went back to the drawing room to get the blueprints from the first build.
From the 1850s. We built the first half of this facility in 1930 to that old design. And then when we doubled the size of it, many years later, we used exactly the same design and did it all over again. So, we're in a building now that was designed in the 1850s.
It could be described as one of the oldest technologies in security, but for Oak Ridge, it's a system that is tried and true, from the front gates to how the rooms are locked.
Okay, so that's open. So I can swing it to open, and all the doors will be open.
So as the person with the key, controlling the key, you're wanting to look through the mirror, watching for making sure that patients don't come through. If they are, you tell them to stop. Letting staff through. Thank you. As I close the gate, I'm still watching for mirrors, watching to make sure. Then I'm switching keys to let him through the next gate.
The ancient design of the building has been through many upgrades to modernize it and make it feel more comfortable for the patients. In the small rooms, the men have made it their own, with the addition of posters and their own artwork, while the hospital worked to make the rest of the building better.
Here's your windows, and we used to have a steel bar table that came out, and sometimes you'd find a small snowdrift coming from the window down onto here because there's so much draft. You'd walk around all the time with your winter coats on. But that's going back 38 years ago. There's different type of windows back then. Yeah. They had their advantages because you could open them up and you put stuff out on the window ledge there and keep it nice and cold. So you had your own fridge. We don't have it now because you can't get out to the ledge. So, there's goods and bads to everything.
For 28 years, this has been C's room. He's made it his own.
As you can see, the rooms are fairly small and cluttered. All my shirts. That's one of the things I like about this building. We're able to make changes. We're able to put up coat racks and so forth.
The building has gone through some changes over the decades, but the real changes and evolution of treatment took place within the walls of Oak Ridge.
Usually the issues are simple ones, really. There's nothing very complicated about it. We express opinions on issues such as fitness to stand trial, the possible application of insanity as a defense, and the suitability of a person for bail. We routinely make opinions on those three areas.
Dr. Russell Fleming has been the psychiatrist at Waypoint for 40 years and was once the chief psychiatrist. At the age of 30, he arrived here with his family to begin his long career.
Well, there was a different philosophy when I came here in 74. There was a different philosophy about the building. It was an ugly old building with bars and so on, but we focused much more. This wasn't me. This was the team that I was sort of channeled into. They focused much more on the quality of what was going on in the building as opposed to the building itself. They basically said, you don't need a palace in which to conduct this work. You can actually keep people's attention if they don't have a lot of creature comforts to distract them. So in addition to a pretty austere building, they took away stuff. People did not have computers, TV sets, and things in their room to amuse themselves with. So the focus for the people that were in the therapy program, the focus was on the interpersonal involvement. And for that, you don't need soft chairs.
Dr. Fleming not only worked at the hospital, but also lived on the property, in this house that still stands today.
It was a monthly rate of $87.50, which included flat rate hydro. Now, the heat in the house, actually, you can't see it from here, but the house at that time had a back kitchen, which is now fell down and was taken away. But the back kitchen had a space heater in it, and the front room right inside of that window there had an oil space heater. And the tank for the space heaters was out on the other side of the house around the corner. And buying the oil was my problem, in addition to the rent. So I started out with one electric heater and then two. And as time went on, I added more electric heaters. I had 6 by the time we eventually bought a house and moved out of here, and got to the point where I had the electrical system maxed out. It's a wonder I didn't burn the place down, because we were actually blowing the big fuses in the panel box that was downstairs.
Dr. Fleming spent nearly 2 years living in this house with his wife and his infant son. The summers were what drew him to the area, and the winters were harsh but enjoyable. It was his work inside Oak Ridge which really fulfilled him.
I think some people are very successful coming through there. In fact, I'm following people now in the community that I had in Oak Ridge in my day there.
While he was chief psychiatrist, one major change happened, and it didn't involve patient care at all.
I was one of the few first women. Used to be strictly male, and what they were trying to do was incorporate women in here to sort of soften the place.
Oak Ridge was considered a dangerous place to work because of the patients the staff cared for.
So I had initially applied for the regional because I didn't think I wanted to work here. Then they offered me a job here, so sure, I'll try it. So I came in and it was different. Big doors, metal doors behind you slamming, and they kind of look at me like, I'm pretty cheery most of the time, so a couple of times I said, oh, good morning, and they would say, what's so good about it, you know? I had one fellow say, you're not gonna last. I thought, why? He said, because you're too nice. Thinking, okay, I showed that guy. 29 years later, here I am.
Attendants here are seen as, I think, mostly as friends of the patients. There's not the patients or the inmates in a correctional facility versus the guards.
Marnie Rice began her career at Oak Ridge in an era when women were just being introduced to the staff. She entered the building with a determination to improve patient conditions. And seeing the results of her research kept her motivated. And today, as Dr. Rice walks through the storied halls of Oak Ridge, she knows this will be one of the last times she is able to do so. As Oak Ridge is reduced to rubble, the memories created inside will always remain.
We did a study on teaching patients social skills, and so we would run these groups in a little room at the end of the ward, so that we did them on B ward and we did them on D ward. And it was this little tiny room, and we'd all sit around the room on pillows. And this was before there was any kind of smoking program, and in fact we used to give patients tobacco. I'm allergic to tobacco. However, through these groups, we'd be in there for an hour and a half at a time, and the patients would be constantly smoking through that whole time. And you know, there'd be butts all over the floor and tobacco spilled all over the floor. But we'd do our social skills groups, and part of that would be that we'd do little role plays, and so they'd have to pretend that they were meeting a woman for the first time and what they'd say to her, and you know, we'd practice things like that. In other groups, we were working on assertiveness, so they'd have to, you know, ask for something that you know, to interrupt somebody to ask for something, things like that. And they were, you know, I mean, they were really fun because the patients were really not socially skilled at the beginnings of those groups, and so I have so many memories of the kinds of things they would say and do in those groups. So that was really a fun time.
Today, there are many women who work with the patients as researchers, nurses, recreational therapists, and more. For many, they develop professional relationships with the men.
For the last many years, I really haven't had much patient interaction, but I still have one patient who was here in 1976, and he only stayed for about a year, but it had a dramatic effect on him, and he still calls me every 4 months. He'd call more if I'd let him, but I tell him he's allowed to call me every 4 months. So faithfully, on the day, every 4 months, he calls me to talk about the good old days. And so, I mean, I have to cut him off because I talk to him for about 10 minutes and then I say, okay, you know, but he still remembers that time so vividly, and so, you know, I still talk to him every 4 months. And there's still some patients here who were here when I came. Not very many, but there's a few.
Over the years, the research conducted at Oak Ridge has been published in many magazines and publications. One study in particular has been used globally.
Internationally, what Mental Health Centre Penetanguishene was best known for was the development of the Violence Risk Appraisal Guide. It's an instrument that's used around the world. Its impact internationally in forensic mental health has been huge. And there's a version of it that is used with sex offenders. The Sex Offender Risk Appraisal Guide is also used around the world, and it's one of about 4 instruments that are used routinely to assess sex offenders.
Dr. Howard Barbary is the head of the Research Institute at Waypoint.
What we're intending to focus on in the future is to increase the extent to which our research has impact on the clinical work that's done, to improve the clinical outcomes for patients.
At one point in the 20th century, there were more patients than staff. Around 400 patients were inside Oak Ridge, until the administration increased the staffing, including adding more women to the team.
The number of patients has declined over the course of time for a number of reasons. I think the most significant of which is the advancement in the kinds of therapeutic interventions we provide. They're much more effective now. Advances in pharmacotherapy have been dramatic over the past 30 years. And in consequence, there are relatively fewer men, and they're all men in this building. There are relatively fewer men whose illness is so difficult to control that they need to be in such a high security environment.
Life at Oak Ridge wasn't all about research and treatment. For many years, a group of volunteers organized activities for the men, including dances. The women from the town would come to Oak Ridge, and the men would dress up and dance to the music played by a local DJ.
I always look forward. Sharon was one of my highlights. Really look forward to my dances with her.
Yeah, I enjoyed my cards and games. That was another
cards
thing.
and games, bingos, and the bake sales.
Yes, we had lots of those.
Yeah.
And
In the 1960s, another change was on the horizon for Oak Ridge. At the time, patients worked in the hospital as part of their treatment, which included working on the farm. But that all changed when Dr. Barry Board came on board. Working toward recovery took form in talking, and eventually patients started to recover.
Prior to the Hucker report, patients within Oak Ridge, in fact, did much of the work on the wards in terms of cleaning and helping staff with various activities. One of the criticisms in the Hucker report was that shouldn't be the case. And in fact, I think fairly quickly after the report was published and we got moving on some of the recommendations, I mean, staffing was enhanced fairly significantly.
So when you're in a setting like this, it's difficult for patients to find their contribution. So when you take a recovery approach, you try to find ways to allow the patients to express themselves in ways that are meaningful to them. And so the drop-in center, as an example, is an opportunity for several of our patients to deliver this coffee house style event to other patients who aren't able to participate in that way but are able to benefit from it. So
Today there are activities in the recreation center, including pool games, a gym, even swimming in the pool. C takes classes in the classroom to improve his reading and writing, something he didn't know how to do when he arrived at Oak Ridge.
Well, it's very scary coming in here with that not being able to read or write. There's so many notes you had to keep. We had daily dyads, and you had to write out your report. And yeah, it was pretty scary. Still is. I get down on myself a lot because of not being able to read or write. So I had low self-esteem, self-worth, and a lot of that has changed with the writing.
The patients get a chance to earn money by working in the wood shop or other vocational services areas. A long-standing tradition at Oak Ridge was where patients made baseballs for a local company, Cooper Baseballs, and it continued until the 1980s. Beyond the care that patients receive, the hospital is a source of intrigue. Many stories have been retold over the years that are now considered folklore. One Christmas, a package arrived for a patient, and a staff member found it unusually heavy, considering it was labeled Christmas cake. After an X-ray, it was found to be a hollow cake with a revolver, bullets, and tear gas inside. And the most famous story of all is of Melville Wilkie, the Houdini of Oak Ridge. Officially credited with 5 escapes, some believe it could have been even more. After 10 years of escaping and being returned, even being captured in Vancouver, Wilkie was discharged and lived a successful life until his death at the age of 85. As the millennium came to a close, Oak Ridge was beginning to show its age. Life was still focused on recovery inside the walls, but the walls did not reflect the care that was happening inside. Administrators like George Kateko and Sharon Zwicker jumped into action and began the 30-year process of advocating for a new building.
And I don't know whether I had been, maybe I was dreaming. And Brian Jones actually was with me. And I remember him saying, our biggest thing was Oak Ridge, and where was it at? And he basically told us it was nowhere. And we put a plan together, and we did actually what was called the Dog and Pony Show. Going out and meeting with all of the political people, all of the mayors in the area, the MPP, of course. They wrote letters to the ministry, et cetera, et cetera. Within about a year and a half, as I said, I was reporting to an ADM. She had no idea, had never been to Oak Ridge. There was no corporate memory within the corporate division whatsoever. She came and was appalled at the conditions in Oak Ridge. Had no concept of it, absolutely none. And I really credit her with getting it moving within the ministry.
Sometimes we just have to take what, we're trying to reduce the amount of trips.
The building doesn't have elevators, just concrete stairs. Staff members walk these stairs many times during the day to carry food, linens, and other things to the wards. The food is delivered from the main building to Oak Ridge. While it is a secure building, it still lacks in convenience.
The physical location, the fact that it's apart from the rest of the campus, trucking meals and laundry and goods that are delivered to the loading dock in the regional building and then going up to Oak Ridge.
After 30 years of asking, the ministry finally said yes. Carol Lambie came to the hospital as the new CEO in 2008 after divestment, ushering in a new name, Waypoint, and a new project, the Atrium building.
Certainly the clinical areas, they've been providing awesome patient care for decades and decades and decades. And so that kind of continued as the business side of the house was more the side that started from scratch.
Oak Ridge has been a place of curiosity for years. People have always wondered what it was like inside these walls. Wondering what the patients were like, developing their own theories. For patients like C, they have their own story.
Oh yes, oh yes. This is my home, and being as my home, it's also my life. What happened to my life? It's all gone. What happened to my 38 years? It's just poof, it never existed type thing. I can't relate anymore.
In 2014, a new building was constructed on the Waypoint campus, a modern facility that replaces Oak Ridge. The Folger Adams Key is a symbol of Oak Ridge itself, and it was handed over at a substantial completion event late in 2013. Betty Valentine, the chair of Waypoint's board of directors, spoke to the future of the hospital. She recognizes that the past has touched many in the hospital, but it was time to look forward to a new era of mental health care, a new philosophy of care, and a hospital void of bars and clanging gates.
I think that's been one of the best things to come of the move. We knew it was going to be a huge change for both the patients and the staff. And we are just thrilled by the reaction from the patients, especially because it's such a change for them. It gives them a much more home-like and hospital-like atmosphere as opposed to the more prison-like atmosphere that was part of the structure that was Oak Ridge.
While Oak Ridge is no longer standing on top of the hill, the building will forever live on in the memories of those who once walked the halls. For everyone at Waypoint, its legacy will live on.
That was the groundwork that built where we are now. It's part of the past, but it's also part of our present, and the memory and the legacy will be part of the future into how we care for our patients.
And for many, the future is still very exciting. It's ever evolving. And in 100 years from now, many wonder what will be said about Waypoint today.
The one thing that I'd want people to know is that we are always looking for ways to improve the care that we provide. I think, and I think that would hold true if somebody were sitting here in 1933, whenever the building was first built, in the Oak Ridge building I'm referring to, is that we're always looking at achieving better ways of doing things. Certainly whenever I look at how we've improved things, that's not a knock on the past, just like whenever somebody sits here 90 years from now and they're going to think, boy, look at what they did in 2014.
In one day, the patients moved, loading school buses and making the trek down the hill to the atrium building.
Say bye to that hockey rink.
We followed C on his move.
Hi, welcome. It's spacious enough. All kinds of people around.
Did you have to pack a lot of your stuff?
I packed everything.
Yeah? Was it hard or was it okay?
It was all right.
After 38 years in one place, C finds himself overwhelmed. His room is double the size. The view is of the bay, and he is speechless.
Whoa, what do you think?
The new building has an altogether different sound. Doors close quietly. They don't bang. There are no bars, only windows. For C, it's an entirely different world.
It's a little bit bigger than what the Ridge was, and actually a little bit neater. And pride and joy here, we do have a beautiful bay. What I like the most about the new building is the scenery. Secondly is the size of the room. I enjoy the ramps, the exercise you get going in the ramps. It's refreshing. Hopefully I'll get in better shape. The exercise that you can get from it, the quietness, the barbecues, it's just beyond words.
The sounds at Oak Ridge are different too. After the patients moved out, all that was left was a silence not heard in more than 80 years. In C's room, the home he had for nearly 40 years, Pictures and words are all that are left. One final tour brought the outside world in. Retirees and current staff were able to show their families where they worked over the years. For everyone who walked these hallways, it was nothing they ever expected.
I don't think I'd want to be here. What do you think of the place? I couldn't imagine. You just think about everybody being in their rooms and scary.
I was very interested in seeing how the patients were treated up here and how they lived, which looked a lot more terrifying when you were a kid as it is today. I'm glad that they've got the new building going, the new atrium. They're actually doing a big 360 to treat patients as patients and not as criminals, as what this building kind of gives you that feeling for, that it's more of a prison than a hospital setting. So I'm really enjoying the tour, and I'm hoping that the new building is really, how can we put it, receptive to the patients now.
I was a nurse in 1986 here, and I worked at the same dispensary my dad did, and actually both of us were just talking about it, and when I became a manager here, this is the first unit that I was a manager on, and this was the first unit my dad was a manager on, so we actually just found that out.
I feel sad. I feel glad. I think it's sad that it's going to be torn down because it is historic, but it's going to happen. And I feel the clients are certainly in a wonderful, wonderful place now. Life should be better for them.
8 decades of care have come to a close at Oak Ridge. The red brick walls with the yellow door will never open again. Lives have been transformed inside the building, but the legacy will live forever in the memories of the people it touched the most.
It may look scary. From the outside, it might not be the nicest. When you first come in, it looks kind of old, but a lot of really good things happen here. A lot of successes have come out of this building. And it's not as scary as everybody thinks it is.
It's my life. It's me. I see the walls. I see myself. As I said, there's good and bad in everything.
The good is what will be remembered. As the chains lock the iconic gates for the very last time, the good things that happen here are taken with the staff and the patients.